Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host George Aldridge, and today, for our first review of the channel, we've got a superhero special planned. We'll be giving you our review on Avengers Age of Ultron, as well as our speculation and hopes for Marvel and DC cinematic universes moving forward. Make sure you stick around at the end of our show. We'll be going into our spoiler section of the review and find out which movie will be nominated for our review show for Thursday, as part of our weekly segment Film Club. Right now, let's get into our review for Avengers Age of Ultron.
I'm gonna show you something beautiful. Everyone screaming for mercy. You want to protect the world, but you don't want it to change. You're all puppets, tangled in strings. Strings. There are no strings on me.
I was kind of late to the party with this film because I know that you got an early screening.
Yeah, I won a competition through the Avengers Facebook page to watch it on Tuesday night at the regional premiere at IMAX, so trekked to Birmingham, saw it Tuesday, which was great because for a start you're in a screening full of fans of the films.
I'm assuming it was packed, wasn't it?
Oh,
Was
it
it
was
packed house?
It was completely sold out. I mean, the guy was coming up to us like, yeah, get as close as you can to them because it's going to be full. And that's fair enough. You don't want someone to miss out on watching a film like that. So that was good. IMAX Birmingham. I've never been to the IMAX that one because my main one shut down. But it was just interesting to go early. However, I still saw it at midnight on release day, and I saw it earlier today on the Saturday, so I've seen it 3 times in technically the first 3 days of release.
Well, you've saw it again today, so you'll probably be a lot more fresher on like your perception of the film, and you'll have seen it multiple times, so you can pick up on extra bits that perhaps I haven't. I've only seen it the once. I went to see it yesterday, which was the Friday of this recording. Packed cinema. And what did you get from people's initial impressions? Did you get the idea that they were into it, that they were enjoying it?
Oh yeah, I mean, on the early screening there was a guy next to me, and before the film he was just chatting to us, chatting about all the sort of comics, Black Widow, stuff like that. So it was interesting going from a radical fanboy on my left to my mate on the right that just enjoys the film, and those two both loved it. But what was interesting was when I saw it on the Wednesday all night / Thursday morning midnight screening, my sister really didn't like it, and she's into the Marvel stuff. She kind of said that no one stood out compared to the first film, which it's interesting, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, actually, that would be a good jumping off point because if we talk about what we've thought of the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far and kind of the lead up to this film and the first Avengers, there have been a few films in the series I've kind of thought were bad or really average. Like Iron Man 2, that's the one everyone usually goes to as that bad one.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Man 2 was a tough one because that was, I think before that you only had Iron Man and the Hulk film. The Hulk film, bit hit and miss with people, but my issue with Iron Man 2 was they were so prepped for the Avengers that you just had Nick Fury for the sake of it.
Yeah, that was my biggest problem with that film, was that it was basically a 2-hour trailer for the Avengers.
Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't at its core an Iron Man film, and it just seemed more out of any of the other Marvel films like they were cashing in on the Iron Man name because it was a big success.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with that was they repeated it. You had a new villain which had a cool backstory, you know, Tony Stark's dad supposedly screwed his dad over, but then it completely killed it at the end when he built his own Iron Man suit. And I've already seen that once. It didn't need it to be seen again at all.
With the exception of probably a first few from the first phase and Guardians, I really haven't dipped back and watched any of the Marvel movies a second time, actually. I'm not into them as much as other people are. Like, I go and see every single one. You know, I have to go and see them now because they're all tying in now.
Yeah, it's
so it's an obligation at this point for me to go and see them.
It's like a TV show, but it's 2 hours long, and an episode comes out every 6 months. It's not an event. I mean, the first Avengers was an event. This was to a degree. it's just when everyone gathers, everyone's chatting, they're all hyped. You can't really compare that. I mean, Star Wars has got it, but there's not a lot of franchises that you're going to get that many people in for.
But one thing I'll give Marvel credit for is that was really ambitious to like say, right, we've got this little film here called Iron Man. On the back of this, we're going to have this multi-billion-dollar franchise of movies. And in, what was it like 4 years after the fact, we're going to have a team-up movie with all these characters.
Yeah.
Because from my mind, I can't think of another film that's achieved that as a team-up movie.
None of them have. Now, what's worked so well for Marvel was the fact it's paid off. The downside of it paying off is all of these other film companies now coming out saying, yes, Transformers film universe, Ghostbusters film universe. DC's a necessity, so that was going to happen, but they've rushed it and they don't know what they're doing.
Sony tried it with Spider-Man as well.
Yeah, that was roadkill to me. That was Amazing Spider-Man was a dying franchise, and then they thought, was it a Black Cat film they wanted? Sinister Six.
Black Cat film, Sinister Six, and you were going to have Amazing Spider-Man 3 and 4, and then off the back of that, they were going to kind of big up all like the kind of villains of Spider-Man as well.
Exactly, and that's not the way to do it.
And I mean, I don't want to kind of like harp on Sony and all that, but whenever something's successful as like this Marvel Cinematic Universe, you're always going to have copycats, and we're seeing that now with DC.
Exactly. I think DC was summed up when you had the Dark Knight, perfect. Their Batman trilogy, no hint of a crossover at all. Marvel does it, so they're just straight in. Let's reboot Batman. Let's try and get Christian Bale back. Let's try and get Christopher Nolan back. But they were having none of it, and I think they knew it's because DC didn't have a plan in set. And they've left the DC cinematic universe in the hands of Zack Snyder, which is incredibly risky, which is why Kevin Feige will go down as arguably one of the greatest producers of all time by the time he retires.
Marvel's working because they have a direction and someone showing them the way. DC have kind of just jumped on the first director of their Foundation movie.
Exactly.
As the kind of godfather and overseer of all these properties, which is not the way to go.
Exactly.
Because I mean, if Batman v Superman bombs, I don't think it will, just based on the name alone. But if it does, and they get rid of Zack Snyder, you've lost your, creative, your director of all your property.
I mean, the whole universe is going to look like a Zack Snyder film. You're going to look at Aquaman. He's gone from a bright orange and green seahorse to essentially just Khal Drogo in a DC film.
Movies at the end of the day are made to entertain audiences, and especially when you've got a superhero popcorn blockbuster, you don't want to go and be depressed for like 2.5 to 3 hours. Exactly.
I mean, I can deal with it when it's a film and it suits the tone of one. So, but stuff like Man of Steel, Superman's a bright character. He's essentially the Captain America, isn't he? Captain America's not dark and depressing. You get a bit of light-hearted in it, although the themes aren't like death and destruction like that. They put a positive spin on it.
And Winter Soldier was the best probably description of that. That's probably still my favourite standalone movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, even going up against Avengers. That still retained the heroic qualities of it and the kind of campiness of the character of Captain America, but it grounded it more. And I know this has been said on loads of review sites, but it was a kind of 70s spy thriller, which really worked for the character of Captain America, I thought.
Yeah, it stood out, and then what you had was a universe-changing moment at the end with the Shields twist.
Yeah. Out of any of the standalone movies, it probably took the most chances.
Yeah, I think I still say to this day that the Winter Soldier is the best Marvel film, and it's the second greatest comic book film behind Dark Knight. And I've stick to that, and I can stick to that for a long time.
And then following that, you had Guardians, which was probably, not counting Ant-Man that's coming out in a few months' time, was probably Marvel's biggest gamble property, and it really paid off.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking forward to it. I didn't expect anything. I just thought that this could be fun. Chris Pratt's that funny guy from Parks and Rec. Batista's the wrestler I liked when I was younger. And then when they combined together, it was kind of, okay, this is actually fantastic.
So going off that, now we move into Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
Which so we'll start by just going with our general overview of the movie. This will be a spoiler-free section so far, so you don't have to worry about it yet. We'll warn you when we're moving into the spoiler section. So why don't you start off? Why don't you kick us off? Just general opinions, something you liked, something you didn't like.
I think this film was fantastic. What I loved about this was they said it was going to be dark, it was going to be gritty. The trailers looked like that. It was dark to a degree, however, when I was watching it, it was literally like watching a comic book come to life. And for fans like me, I mean, I love reading them. Read all the Infinity Gauntlet, stuff like that. It was just fascinating to watch it. There were a few iffy things, but 90% of it was quality. And although the tone was a lot darker than the first Avengers and a few of the other Marvel films, they still had the light-hearted comedy, and this was very much a Joss Whedon film, which is another thing I enjoyed because they clearly gave him creative control.
See, I will counter that point. I think he had less control over this one than he did the first one. Maybe with the characters, the new characters that were introduced and the kind of beats he had to hit, it seemed like the studio had a lot more control of this one. And I don't know if that's a pattern with Marvel, because you look to I forgot his name, the director, Jon Favreau, the director of Iron Man and Iron Man 2. Marvel had all the control over the second movie.
Yeah.
So he left the property, and I just think that I'll give my biggest problem of the movie now. I'll just say that I was kind of let down by it. I don't think it quite achieved the hype that the trailers set for it. And I don't know if that's a case that I always go with the law of diminishing returns with films. With Avengers, it was new. We hadn't seen it before. But because we've shown the Avengers now, we've had all the standalone films, it kind of lessens the effect of seeing all these characters again on screen. So as sequels go, I found it very kind of by the numbers, and I think that was probably because Marvel went, this worked in the first film, let's just do exactly the same thing again for the second one because we know it worked.
I think of that to a degree. What I say about it is, with the creative control, there were some blatantly obvious things like the Black Panther reference.
Yeah, Andy Serkis plays a character in it. Now, I'm not like you. I haven't read any of the comics. I'm familiar with some of the characters and some of the bigger storylines that go on in comics, but I mean, I didn't know who he was. I guessed that he would be important for future films because you cast someone like Andy Serkis, who was great in this movie, by the way.
Yeah. What he is, he's a guy called Cora. I won't go into detail, but he is essential in Black Panther becoming the Black Panther. I mean, I'm not 100% familiar with the Black Panther, but I think it's like the king of Wakanda, which is, again, a fictional country that's name referenced in this. So I understand from a point of view that there were a few things Whedon was told, you're going to put this in. But I think when you watch it, a lot of this stuff was his choice. But another thing I noticed is that the cast look like they're having a great time. I mean, they all get on with the director. They're all clearly good mates in the background, and they just seem to be having a blast, which, again, you can see on screen, and I think it improved, I mean, the charisma of them as well. It's just when they're all in a scene together, it's just great fun. I think it's personal now with the heroes. I mean, what you've got these 6 primary Avengers plus the new faces.
Yeah.
And I think everyone can identify with at least one of them to a degree. And I think because there's so many characters, there's a favourite that you're just drawn to. I mean, I enjoy a lot of them, but with this, Hawkeye became one of the witty ones who got his second chance because he was underused in the original.
He definitely, I would probably say he gets the most focus in this movie.
Oh, definitely.
Out of any of the members of the Avengers, probably him and Black Widow.
Yeah.
Seem to be the focal two of this film. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'll leave that up to the viewer. But I mean, I think Hawkeye was first introduced in a scene in Thor, if I'm correct.
Yeah, when Thor is banished to Earth, all S.H.I.E.L.D. are surrounded by his hammer, if you can remember. And then they just kind of call him, and he's just watching, and he says something like, I'm rooting for this guy. And then he just disappeared. So he had his one scene, then a year later he's in the Avengers.
And even then in Avengers, he got he's pretty much, they make a joke of it in this movie actually, that he's kind of, why are you in this team? You're pretty much worthless. I mean, you're up against a super soldier, a god, a genetically mutated monster, and a guy who can create all this outlandish tech. You're a guy with a bow and arrow.
Exactly, and I think that's where the issue with the first film is, that I'm not familiar with Hawkeye as a comic book character.
I know that he wears a much more fabulous costume in the comics, like a bright purple spiked helmet costume. Yeah,
you get bits and bobs of that in this one. That's another thing I noticed. They improved his outfit to a degree, but what he had, you could see him properly fighting, standing a chance, and he becomes more of a team player, which everyone says he is in the comics. And then you get a bit of a backstory to him, which is only touched upon in recent years, I think, in the Mark Millar version. So that was a nice little add to. And I think I can safely say that from this film, he's become my favourite.
He definitely gets a lot more depth. My problem with it was, let's just be honest. Well, I know you'll disagree now. Out of all the Avengers, he is kind of the most disinteresting.
Yeah, he is. I think that's why it's shifted so much. I mean, give it a few weeks, he'll probably drop down. But not to the...
And I don't know whether it would have been more beneficial to have, basically, we'll go into this in the spoiler section, but there's the whole second act of this movie is kind of revolving all around Hawkeye and his family.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been better suited to have that in the first Avengers movie, perhaps, because then we would have cared about him in your first Avengers movie. By this stage, I just don't know if it's a little too late.
I don't know. I mean, I was all for the change of having him, or what it is that every single character on screen is developed in the standalone films. I mean, okay, Black Widow didn't have her own film, but she's been in the Winter Soldier as a main character in Iron Man 2, still in the Avengers, whereas Hawkeye had his 5 minutes in Thor and an underused part in the Avengers. So this is the backstory that he could have had in another film, but they didn't go for it. So it was just nice that he got a bit of centre stage, and he got some of the best jokes too.
And I guess in a movie like this, which the focus of it is on the action, you do need those kind of more tempered moments where it gives the audience a chance to breathe, and you establish a bit of character in what's otherwise kind of a, like the last action set piece of this movie is like a 40-minute long just city explosions and all that good stuff. Oh yeah,
I mean, that's one of the minor issues I had with it. I thought it was working great, and then it was a great final battle, but then there's this part of it when it's exactly like the Chitauri at the end of the first Avenger film.
Yeah, you've got a whole bunch of faceless, identical bad guys, henchmen.
Yeah, they're just endless.
This is what I mean when it was paint by the numbers. It's not just the paint by the numbers of the first one. It's a lot of summer blockbusters now, like your Transformers, Man of Steel. It's just always a battle in a city. Now, I know that that's a problem with, okay, you've got the Avengers on Earth where you're going to have a battle. It looks visually more interesting to have it in a city where you've got a lot going on and you can do a lot with it. But just even like cinematically, like just none of the frames in this movie popped to me. There was never moments where I kind of, sat back in my chair and took in the beauty of the screen and go, whoa, that's impressive. I don't know, it just seems, I was just sitting back like I've seen all this before.
What I thought was, this is where the repeat viewings comes into factor. The first time I saw it, I was like, okay, this is awesome. The second time, it was the focus on the minor things. And what I noticed was, the first battle with Hydra.
Yeah.
On the forest.
That was great. I loved that scene.
That is all one take until it cuts to Iron Man in the, the normal camera of him when he's inside. And I only properly noticed that on the second time round. And then again, it's like everyone remembers the first film's long take, but this one was far superior. It's a lot harder to do because they're following the flying stuff, to be fair. And then I think the second time round, of course you pick up better things, but it improved the film. Whereas I've seen dozens of films before. One of them was Thor 2 to me, where I saw it the second time round, I was like, oh. And then this happened a few times where your expectation of how good it was the first time dims rather than improves. And I think that's how I like to judge films. The second viewing is the important one.
We see, for me at the minute as it stands, I don't know whether I'd go and see this movie a second time. I don't think there's anything else I could take from it on a second viewing, really. Um, I mean, I don't mean to harp on this film. I still had a great time, and it's definitely pivotal that you see this on a big screen. I mean, these kind of films, you just have to.
Oh, definitely. I mean, IMAX 3D is the best way to watch films, and it's the way that they're designed. I mean, they film in IMAX for a reason on some scenes. They want you to go, it's a tad more expensive, it might be far away, but you're getting the best value for your money, rather than a small screen with two big speakers at the side, stuff like that. This is a film you need to see as quick as you can before it gets spoiled, and it's also a film you just have to see in the best place you can get tickets for.
And I mean, we got our new villain with this one, Ultron.
I think James Spader, not Spader, James Spader's an intriguing actor. I've seen The Office where he came in it for a season and he was fantastic, and it was his voice. And then after that is when he got cast as Ultron, and I thought, okay, this is quality, because even in The Office, obviously it's not Joss Whedon writing it. Even his dialogue is so fascinating in a sitcom, and it's the way that he says it is just so believable. And then Ultron in this, he has these moments of wisdom. But what was unfortunate about Ultron was that at times, don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic villain, but he could have been better if a few of the funny lines were dropped, because I just didn't expect him to have them.
I think Ultron works better when he's a very kind of philosophical, serious villain. Loki, that's one of the problems I had with Loki in the Avengers movie, was that they kind of played him up for laughs, and so there wasn't really much intimidating factor with him. But I think with Ultron, I mean, just the look of him, I mean, when the first trailers came out, and we heard that voice with "I've got no strings to hold me down."
Oh, it was terrifying for a Marvel film.
That was chilling, absolutely chilling. And don't get me wrong, there are moments in this film where he's talking about kind of evolution and humanity's reached its peak and now it needs to be extinguished. And there are like entire monologues he has in this movie that are fantastic, but then they're kind of lessened when he has a kind of sarcastic remark or a really out of place one-liner thrown in.
Exactly, that's what did it for me with him. Because I saw, obviously, this is when repeat viewings come into play again.
Yeah.
There's this speech he does with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch in like a sort of hospital area. He starts off with a sarcastic comment, but then he has this fantastic monologue, and I thought it completely dampened it to have the jokes.
And another really minor thing with Ultron is, I didn't find the voice as effective as they were even in the trailers.
No.
Because in the trailers he had the echoey, raspy, robotic voice, which was great. But in this, he had moments like that, but then he'd also have moments where he'd just sound like James Spader. Or even at times, he'd even sound like Robert Downey Jr.
Yes, and that was another fault. I mean, I know Iron Man created Ultron. Everyone knows that from the trailers, but it doesn't mean he's got his dialogue.
Yeah, and this isn't a spoiler, but there's a scene in the movie where Tony Stark stands toe-to-toe with Ultron and they have an exchange of dialogue. And if it hadn't have cut to Ultron, I wouldn't have known who was talking.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like Robert Downey Jr. It was insane.
Exactly. And I don't know why they needed to do it, unless they just wanted to try and make him a bit funnier, but he would have been far more intimidating. I mean, imagine if the Joker would have, said a Batman, because Ultron's your A-list Avenger villain. I mean, what it essentially is, you can look at Thanos, he's the big bad guy that could end it all. But Ultron's the one that comes up time and time again, and he is their main threat.
Yeah. And the last point I'll make on Ultron and then we'll move on to some of the other new characters that were introduced. They sort of play up a kind of schizophrenia with him.
Yes.
Which I don't think was as developed as it could have been. Like, we got probably about 3 scenes where he'd hold his head in his hands and kind of shake it off and go back to Ultron, but that never really had any payoff, I didn't think.
No, but there's a few times in the film where you think, oh, there's going to be an extended cut. I mean, I think I read that was confirmed.
I definitely
today.
got that impression because, I mean, not to sound snobby or anything, but I do editing in my spare time, and there were moments in this film where I thought the editing was quite poor. There's the scene especially before the title card hits, and also the scene before the end credits come up was very jarring to me. And if an editor's done a good job, you don't notice any of the cuts. You just sit back and watch the film. But there were moments in this film where it kind of took me out of it. But I definitely get that impression that there's probably an extended cut with maybe like half-hour extra or something.
Yeah, I'm just reading now that it has been confirmed. Amazon sent out an email to everyone with pre-orders.
For an extended cut?
Not confirmed. They haven't confirmed on the email, but Joss Whedon has.
Because I don't think they have, but Marvel haven't bought an extended cut out before, have they? Like, I know the Avengers had deleted scenes, but there was never one where they were reinstated back into the movie.
No, there was talk of the Incredible Hulk's one, because that's loads of politics. Ed Norton kept changing the script on set because he's a great actor, but he's very up himself. So there was talk.
He's kind of really was his character from Birdman.
Yes, and that's another reason why Birdman's a film worth watching.
Yeah,
he's fantastic in that. But yeah, on the Blu-ray will include an extended version and an alternate ending.
I think definitely this film could have been shortened down in places. Like, I would have probably have cut like 10 minutes out of the end fight, and I would have probably quickened the pace up during the second act.
Yeah, it just jumped too much. I think they had a little. Not actually. I think the end fight was far too long. It could have been.
Oh yeah.
It reminded me a bit like Guardians of the Galaxy. As great as that was, I would say less is more with a film. I mean, in a way, it's comparable to the Avengers because they kind of flow as a unit. The Guardians do, as do the Avengers in this, but the Avengers just jumped to the ending too much. Where Guardians was done perfectly for the ending. But it's just the final battle, just the endless robots. You could have had a lot less. Could have built up Ultron a lot more.
And that just seems like the typical trope now with action films. It's like, oh, the audience will like it if there's more action, so let's have like a 45-minute long end fight. And after like the first 20 minutes, you're tired. You're literally fatigued of watching the action.
Yep.
I think if you had like a really short, maybe 25-minute running action scene at the end, it would have been great. But there were definitely a lot of scenes where it meandered. Like, we'll get into the spoiler section, but there's like a whole car chase that's thrown in one bit, and I think you could probably have took that out of the movie.
Yes, definitely. It tried to do too much, and it didn't have enough time. I'm excited for the extended cut. Whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 20, I think it could make a big difference.
And I think one of the factors as to why probably the action scenes had to go on longer is you had two new characters in this one with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. So the film had a bigger cast to deal with, and it had to give each one their kind of hero moment. Like, you had that in the first Avengers film.
Yeah, I want to say that the addition of those two was quality. What annoyed me, something happened at the end, I won't go into detail. But Scarlet, obviously, Quicksilver was in X-Men last year, and Marvel announced that they were going to have him before Fox did, which is why I still believe that the Quicksilver X-Men scene was added in to try and scare off Disney. Didn't work. I mean, the scene worked, but scaring them off didn't, because Quicksilver is much better in Age of Ultron than he was in Days of Future Past.
Do you think?
Yeah, what it is that in Days of Future Past you get this fantastic scene, which is great, but that's the only reason they had him in there. The original draft had Juggernaut doing that scene, which probably would have been a lot funner, I think. Well, not funner, but...
Oh, I didn't hear about that.
When Matthew Vaughn was writing the script, obviously, he chose Kingsman over X-Men, which is fair play in my sight. He had Juggernaut diving through the Pentagon, apparently, with his head, right to the ground floor, getting Magneto going. And then, what do? They cast Aaron Johnson as Quicksilver. Fox jump on the bandwagon and say, nope, we'll get Quicksilver now as well. And I think what you do, you see him as a team player in the Avengers, whether he's working with Scarlet Witch, whether he's working with some other people. I thought it was great to see him in a different shade of light. And then with Scarlet Witch as well, they hint at the incest relationship they've always had in the comics. It's not like blatant, but they like hold hands briefly. But I thought she was excellent as well. And for the future films, as it's confirmed she's going to be in Civil War now, I think she's got a big future in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, definitely. And this really isn't a spoiler, but they're pegging her for as one of the core members of the team after this initial one
Yeah,
for going forward in the future. But no, I'm on the opposite side of you. I think the Quicksilver we got in Days of Future Past was much stronger. I think I don't know if it was just the actor in Age of Ultron. He just really didn't do anything for me, and this goes for both him and Scarlet Witch. The European slash Russian accents that they were attempting were so bad.
it was an obvious accent. That's what I thought. When they
Mm,
first spoke, he's like, "Oh, what did he say? Like, didn't you see this coming?" It was
yeah.
just so effortless. I mean, they were both in Godzilla as the main leads, which is
Mm,
hilarious. They obviously joined the Avengers together for filming and stuff.
yeah.
But I thought they stuck to the roots because they're European in the comics. Um, I don't know. I really enjoyed it, and I think it would have been so easy for them just to have had an American version,
Mm,
just like they did in obviously Days of Future Past. So they tried to be different and be similar at the exact same time, which I think they do pull
mm.
off. And you see a different shade to him.
I just don't know if there was a need to have them in this movie. Like, I know that you want to establish future teammates, and Ultron's got to have people to talk to. He can't just walk around on his own. But I don't know. I don't know if going back to that one scene from Days of Future Past. I mean, that was literally jaw dropping. I loved everything in that scene, and I thought the character was different enough from the comic books, but also kind of retained some of the same qualities. Like, I liked his personality more in that movie, but I don't get why they didn't use him throughout the rest of the movie. I mean, he's kind of the linchpin that gets Magneto out of the Pentagon, and then they just leave him.
Yeah, and that's the problem. The fact that he's used so well in that one scene makes you think that he could have just ran around the world. Well, this is a spoiler for X-Men, but I think everyone's seen it. He
Yeah.
could have just ran around the world, picked up Jennifer Lawrence, and it was done.
Hmm.
So they kind of have to kick him out. That scene has him so overpowered that they've kind of built him into this corner now, where he can't become a key player.
Hmm.
Whereas the way the Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are used is that they equal them out with the team.
Hmm. Yeah, because there's moments in this film where Quicksilver's still super fast, and like they established he can like catch a bullet and things like that. But he's still very much on the same level, or even lesser than some of the other Avengers, which I think works for the characters because you need to show off the cool moments to get the audiences interested in them, but you also need to not overpower them too much. Like, that was one of my biggest concerns with Scarlet Witch at the start of this film.
Oh, yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
It was cool because I suppose that's her power, the telekinesis.
Mm.
But the way in which it's used, I saw it as more of a plot device than anything. I mean, some of it was great. You got a bit of a backstory to Black Widow, which everyone had been waiting for.
Mm.
But then you got a few unnecessary things, a great set piece out of it. But I just enjoyed seeing her at the end. To be fair, when they're actually in the team now, and you're actually seeing her do cool stuff with the powers rather than just brainwash people.
Mm.
So I think the way she's developed, and also the fact that these two, the total screen time of those two is probably about 20 minutes total. And
Yeah, like, for as much as they big them up in the trailer, they're really not the main focus of the film.
exactly, but their backstory is one of the best backstories I think I've seen Marvel do in
Yeah.
such a short space of time, because you can understand why they're doing what they're doing.
And it added a somewhat moral grey area to the Avengers and members of the team, so you can already see at this stage they're planting the seeds for Civil War. There's not as much tie-in to Civil War as I expected there to be, but there's still like seeds been planted in this film, where we'll see the team eventually, divide and crumble. What we'll do is now is, because I think we're kind of wrapping up the spoiler-free section, we'll just go over general overview. We'll recommend the movie, and we'll get into the spoiler territory more. So, general overview for me. I didn't enjoy it as many other people are, but it's still a solid cinematic experience. If chances are, if you're a Marvel fan, you'll have seen this film already, so there's no point in me recommending it. But yeah, big screen, full price. There's a lot of action in it. Sometimes it does get exhausting, and I don't. It's not as good as the first Avengers in my mind, because I think that one balanced all of the characters effectively. I think there's parts in this movie where some of the characters are kind of dropped for a long while to the point where you almost forget they're in the film. It was nice hearing the main theme used again, weaved into the score, because that was one of my biggest problems I have with Marvel, is they tend to have a great main theme for their hero, but then they'll bring in a different composer for the sequels, so you kind of lose that. But yeah, no, I'd recommend it, but it just didn't quite hit the level I expected it to.
I am going to. It's fairly obvious what I'm going to say. You need to watch. You need to watch this film as soon as you can at the biggest screen you can. Don't watch it in 3D though if you can't. That was a waste. I'm an advocate of 3D. It didn't use it well. But the final thoughts were: this is better than the first film. It flows fantastic. It's true to the comics, and you are going to have a great time. If you liked the first one, you should like this one. If you're not a Marvel fan, then obviously you're not watching the film. Let's be honest. But just go for it. See what you think. I've seen a few divided people, so it's just interesting to know what people think of it as a whole.
I do think it appeals to a lot of ages as well. Like in my screening, there were a lot of people my age, like early 20s. But then like a little kid came in at the back with his mum. So it's definitely got that family factor. And I mean, there's nothing else on at the cinema now. This is just going to clean up at the box office.
Yeah, there was... On the Tuesday, there was a few little kids, mainly filmy people, who would have entered that competition. Midnight, you don't take a kid to a midnight. It's packed. There were, I think there were 5 screenings at my cinema on midnight, so that sums up how massive this will be. I mean, the most screenings I've ever seen is 2, and that was Harry Potter. And then today, obviously, it was daylight, so there were tons of kids, but there were also a lot of fans. It's appealing to everyone. Just watch it, see what you think. Come back to us.
Tried to create a suit of armor around the world, but I created something terrible. Artificial intelligence. It's called the Ultron program. I'm sick of watching people pay for our mistakes. Isn't why we fight so we can end the fight and go home?
Well, you amazingly failed.
Okay, so if you're sticking with us, then you'll have seen the movie, or if you just don't care about spoilers, I guess. So, what do you want to focus on first? Do you want to talk about the main plot points of like the ending, and kind of tie-ins as where we thought it was going to go?
Yeah, I want to speak about the Civil War connection.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Right. So, Civil War's the best Marvel comic book series of all time, and then it leads on to the death of Captain America. What I was hyped up about this was that this was going to be darker and grittier than the first film. It was going to lead right up to the friction between Tony Stark and Captain America. There are 2 scenes in which you have a tee-up for Civil War, and they are completely destroyed at the end of the film. Because what you get, the first scene is when they're chopping up the woods and you can see the friction between the two. Iron Man's created Ultron, Captain America's not happy at all. So you've got that friction there, and it's quite tense, even the dialogue in that scene, and they chuck a joke in at the end, but Tony Stark walks away. So you have this as like, okay, here we go, there's going to be a bit of Civil War. Then you get to the scene in which Ultron's created, and this is when, for me, I got the division of the teams, because you had Scarlet Witch and Captain America, and who was the third one? What you got a 3-on-3 mini battle. Oh, it was Quicksilver. But then you got Iron Man with Hawkeye and Thor, and then you got this great 30-second fight, I'd say, between Iron Man and Captain America. And I thought, Civil War, this is it. This is how it started. You know, the controversy of Ultron, then creating Vision. I thought, this is great. You know, this is teed up, and then right at the end of the film, it's just, you know, it's red and rosy.
It's almost like an identical ending to the first one, really. All the heroes go their separate ways because we've got to have standalone movies following this one.
Exactly, but my issue with the ending was that it should have. There were hardly any casualties to civilians. You know, when they're like, it's either 3,000 or.
Definitely in this movie, the collateral damage was just insane. It was almost like Man of Steel level.
There was
collateral damage.
There were a few things that were worse than Man of Steel, because Man of Steel, if you're having two alien generals fighting, then essentially there's going to be buildings exploding.
Yeah.
With this, what I got fed up was with Captain America's like, I'm going to get every single person off this flying thing. But then Tony Stark's like, I've got to make a choice. That should have been the part where people got killed. Because in the Civil War comic, thousands of people get killed at school. And then what they do, no one dies, everyone gets off, everyone's happy for the public. And then you just kind of see Captain America, Tony Stark just being mates go in their separate ways. Whereas this film should have ended with those two being on each other's back, or the start of the Civil War film in itself. You could have even had like an opening scene degree, but I just thought it left it so nice for them at the end that it's going to be harder to get into Civil War, because it had the opportunity to go straight into a Civil War film, whereas now they've got to rebuild it up.
Exactly. I mean, I was really looking forward to Captain America Civil War. At first I was confused that they were going to put that storyline into a Captain America movie. Like, I thought they'd be saving this for like the next big thing after the Thanos story's tied up. But I guess it makes sense to put it in the Captain America film now for this cinematic universe. But yeah, it needed something at the ending. Like, if you're going to compare it to other film trilogies, like always the go-to one is Star Wars. The first movie is your foundation movie where you establish all your characters. Empire Strikes Back ends on a real downer. Like, the heroes haven't won; they're at their lowest point, and I think that's what you needed for this.
Yeah, that's what it should have been. Empire Strikes Back, Dark Knight. Dark Knight, Batman was the villain. Harvey Dent had killed people. Rachel was dead. In this, you didn't get any of it, and that's what they were missing. This should have been the dark. It should have been a nasty ending. It should have been a reaction that people didn't like. Kids would have been crying, but they left it a bit too easy for them. And the only reason Quicksilver died, I think, was because he was used by the X-Men. I mean, I prefer this Quicksilver, but I do believe that they only killed him so he'll be an X-Men and people don't get confused.
As much as I say I didn't like the character of Quicksilver in this film, when he says like you didn't see that coming, I agree with that. I did not see them killing him off, because I thought that him and Scarlet Witch were going to be two of the major team members for the sort of second phase of the Avengers.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. But then the downside of they hyped up Hawkeye to die so much, they went to Game of Thrones and kept Hawkeye alive and killed off the other guy. But it worked well, because I had a bit of an emotional impact. He hadn't been in it long enough, but it was a bit like, oh no, he's gone. Whereas before, I've seen films like this where I don't really care that anyone's died.
Yeah, like with Quicksilver as well, like when he gets shot at the end, part of me was thinking, well, we've established that you're faster than a bullet. I don't think that would actually, you would get hit by bullets.
I don't know, because what he does, he flips the bus up, so I assume he would have sacrificed himself for the kid at the market and Hawkeye, which was quite cool, because Hawkeye's become one of my favourites now.
I just think that we had so much of the film where Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were kind of the bad guys, that we didn't get enough time of them interacting with the rest of the Avengers and seeing their human side. They seemed very cardboard cutout characters, I felt. They didn't have any kind of levity or humanity to them for me to care about him dying.
Yeah, I think that's
the problem you have when you introduce a new character in this film and also kill them off in the same movie. We haven't had multiple films with this character like we have with more or less everyone else.
Exactly. I think killing Hawkeye would have been a mistake, because everyone knows he's the easy option. I actually thought they'd be killing War Machine, because he was in the trailers and he didn't come in the War Machine suit till the film. So I thought he would have died at the party, which, that would have actually been a big impact, because you've had 3 films of Rhodey in, so that could have worked. But now he's going to be part of their new Avengers lineup. That's going to be very fun, I think, too. And that's what I was really excited with. Another thing, the sort of last minute when they came together, it's the closest thing you can actually get to like a reboot in continuation, because you've got your new Avengers team, but in the background that all the originals are going to come back for the Infinity War. So that was really cool, I thought.
there was definitely a noticeable lack of Falcon. Like at the end when they're kind of training up the new recruits. War Machine's in the film, but he's not in it loads. He has a little flying around shooty moment at the end for maybe like a couple of minutes. But Falcon's never seen until the end. And I was thinking, like, why didn't you do anything?
This is what I picked up today, actually. So, he's at the party scene.
Yeah.
He's chatting to Cap, and he's like, we've got cold leads on the missing person case. And it clocked to me today that the missing person is the Winter Soldier. Cold leads is essentially Winter in itself.
Oh, right.
So I clicked on, and then he kind of said Avengers for you guys. So that was kind of, I'm not ready, but I'm also doing the backstory to an aspect of what the next Captain America film is going to be.
Oh, that's a cool tie-in. I didn't pick up on that. That's a
Yeah.
good shout.
I mean, that's why he weren't there, whereas Rhodey doesn't really do anything, so he kind of had to be there.
Yeah. But and if we're talking about balancing character, there were a few members of the Avengers I thought kind of got the shaft in this movie. Definitely Thor. There's a whole bit in the second movie where he goes on some kind of quote-unquote spirit quest. And it was like I completely missed something in the film. Like I was watching him in this pool. Like this kind of, he goes into this dark cave and like submerges himself in some water, does his electric power, and then he just goes back to the team. And I was like, did I miss something? Like, why is he here?
What that was for was just like Guardians of the Galaxy did, just in case there's someone that doesn't know what's coming soon. They kind of had to put a teaser in for the Infinity Gauntlet. Okay, there's the mid-credit scene, but the casual film goer wouldn't stay for that credit scene. So they're kind of telling people that something's coming soon. And to have Thor go up, you see Asgard in flames, which really, I thought that was actually really good at teasing for Thor 3.
Yeah, I hope that's good.
But what annoyed me was that I read a month or two ago that Tom Hiddleston had a part in this film because he was put on the posters like credited. And then I worked out that there's a guy in a black hood in Thor's flashback. And that was so blatantly Loki.
Maybe in the extended cut we're talking about.
That's what it will be. I guarantee that'll be in the deleted scenes. So I was a bit sad of that, but I thought it's done a great job at teasing Ragnarok, which is so blatantly going to be Thanos, indeed. Because I think Thanos is going to come to Asgard, cause some shit, take his Infinity Gem, which is the Tesseract. Then you've got part 1 of Infinity War, which will be him on Earth.
Maybe like Asgard's on the way to Earth and he kind of destroys that. He's going around like through the galaxy claiming worlds, and then he kind of goes like, next stop Earth.
Exactly, I mean,
or something like that. I know that's not what it is in the comic, or indeed like Norse mythology, but I mean, it's Marvel Comics, they've only loosely based it on it. But I think in terms of what you're establishing for your Marvel Universe, and let's be honest at the minute, besides hardcore comic book fans, general moviegoer really doesn't know who Thanos is. I mean, we had a mid-credit scene in the first Avengers film. We saw him for about 5-10 minutes in Guardians of the Galaxy, but he wasn't really established or developed that much. And that's kind of it. But I think if you show him off in a big film like Thor, audiences will be like, wow, okay, this villain means business. And then you don't need to take the time to establish him in your Infinity War film.
Yeah, that's what I think they're doing. I think Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is going to be the collector getting the Infinity Gem from Nova Corps. I think Thor 2, yeah, you're right, it's going to demonstrate his firepower, and then he will come to Earth because Vision's got the Infinity Gem. And I think that you're going to get part 1 of the Avenger film ending with, he's got the Infinity Gauntlet, he could have killed 1 or 2 of the new Avengers. There's so much potential to be had with this. I think Kevin Feige's got the right track going. When they put Thanos in the credit scene of the first Avengers film, everyone was like, oh my god, it's Thanos. I thought that he would be the villain in the Avengers 2, as did every other person in the world.
Yeah, and I'm glad they didn't do that.
Exactly, now that's working in their favour, because they've so clearly built this mind map of how they're going to do it. They must have always had a plan for him to be in a potential third film, have the Infinity Gauntlet properly spread out across films, which is credit where it's due. It's going to be fantastic if it's pulled off right.
I was just going to go back to Thor's vision and other scenes that were cut from the trailer. I believe there was a character from, I want to say Black Panther. It looked like a woman in a black dress, and it was in that cave that Thor was in.
Yeah,
And she has her back to the camera, and she kind of turns her head over her shoulder.
yeah, I remember this because it looked like he'd been whipped or something by her. No one knew who this character was at all. I mean, I hadn't heard of her. I was intrigued, and then I heard that she's been cut. So whether they'd made a mistake on a character they want to save for another time or something else, it's something that might work. But I think that was one of the things where everyone was just like, "Who is this person?"
Yeah, and but yeah, I just think Thor's character was not wasted, but he just didn't really have anything to do, to the point where they just had to kind of write some kind of bullshit subplot for him to go and attend to.
Yeah, that it was a bit of a shame because he is at the house when he just, oh yeah, I'm off, clicks his fingers, then he comes back just out of nowhere for the Vision thing.
And were there any other characters you thought got sidelined in this movie? I kind of want to say Hulk, but then again, we did get a big action set piece with the Hulk, and I don't know what else you really could have done with him.
I think with the Hulk they were always going to have the Hulkbuster fight, because I remember in the Iron Man 3 trailer there was a similar armor for it, and it didn't do anything in the film. And I think their plan might have originally been a Planet Hulk film, which is basically him getting shot into space at the end.
Yeah, no, I got that impression as well.
And
But I watched an interview with Joss Whedon, and basically says I don't think a Planet Hulk film can be done. And also you've got the politics with I believe it's Paramount Studios with rights to the Hulk.
It might be Universal.
Universal, sorry, yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
what's good about it is they've quietly done their business. I mean, they got the Hulk rights for the Avengers. Universal don't care. They're probably getting a bit of cash off it, but they're not making a big deal out of it. Whereas Sony, who were the exact opposite. But I don't think they'd do a Planet Hulk film. It would have been cool if they did. But there were rumours about him being in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which is actually linked to the extended edition.
Oh, okay.
What's been revealed is that the alternate ending, you know, when Nick Fury says, "Oh yeah, there's been a plane shot down, it could be him."
Yeah, and he says like he may have swam to Fiji or something like that.
Yeah, apparently what it is the Quinjet is just kind of hovering above the atmosphere, like, so it's borderlining space, and then it's supposed to cut or something like that, which is, again, is linked to the original mid-credit scene, which I'd heard about, because I heard a rumour months and months ago that the film would end with Hulk being shot into space and the Guardians of the Galaxy finding him and bringing him back to Earth. Obviously that didn't happen at all, but there's still potential for something like that. But
And I think that would be a good way of having Hulk have something to do without giving him his own film, but you've got a big, well, it's going to be a franchise now with Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah, I mean, a Planet Hulk film is basically unfilmable in my eyes.
Yeah.
It's too much CGI. There's no humans. So
It will look like John Carter.
yes, that's exactly what it would be. I mean, because there's even an arena fight scene.
Yeah.
I think a Guardians would be not an easy option, but that would be the right option. And then again, that's another path. You could have Thanos come into Earth for the other films, but I don't know what they're going to do with him. My feeling is that he'll come back for part 2 of the Avengers.
Yeah. What side he'll be on? Oh, so you don't think he'll be in Civil War?
Oh no chance of Civil War. I don't think at all. It's he didn't appear in the comics for it. What happened is that at the time of the comics, it cuts to a page like, "Where's the Hulk?" Then it cuts to the Planet Hulk comic, and it's just a panel of him like beating up like things in space.
Oh, okay.
So that's I think they're going to go down that path. Just he's disappeared. He still ain't here. Which would have made.
Well, it doesn't seem like audiences are particularly missing Hulk. Like I'm not hearing a massive outcry for it.
No, I think he doesn't suit Civil War, because in all honesty, if you're going to have a film of two Marvel factions fighting each other, whoever has the Hulk wins.
Yeah.
And I think you've already had your Hulk fight with Iron Man. You don't need to see it again.
Do you want to go into that a bit? Because I had a few problems with that fight scene, actually.
Yeah, my main problem was destruction.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. I mean, I know throughout the film you have scenes where the heroes will save a couple of people. but casualty-wise, it's still got to be in the thousands, easily, even
Yeah,
in the final action scene. Now, Man of Steel didn't have any scenes of Superman saving anyone, so I think that this film does it better, but certainly in that Hulkbuster fight, it definitely became more apparent, and I didn't even really have that problem in the first Avengers film, because it all seemed like it was really contained.
exactly. I mean, in the first film, they're like, yeah, Iron Man, keep a radius on this. We don't get it past this block, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it was like, oh, Hulk's on the loose. Everyone's kind of ill. Let's just fight. And then it was that scene when they say they've gone to the unpopulated area. They take down a whole construction building, and it's just when they were falling down, I was like, "This is Man of Steel." Then my friend today actually said it halfway through again, because obviously I thought it. He turned around and goes, "This is like Man of Steel,"
Mm.
which is interesting because you've had Marvel fanboys that have only moaned about the destruction of Man of Steel, and now they've essentially seen it in the Avengers. So it's going to be interesting to see reactions of people.
I think it was just a case of, like, I don't know whether it was the director or the studio, whatever, going like, oh yeah, fans have always wanted to see Hulk fight Iron Man. Let's just make it just epic and just have destruction just everywhere. And it's like, yeah, you can do that, but when it gets to the point, like you said, where people can point it out and just be taken out of the fight scene because of the destruction, then it's a problem. And I kind of had that problem with the end fight as well.
Yeah, the end fight again. It was a flying city.
Yeah.
There were buildings crumbling everywhere, stuff like that, and there was just, I mean, this Iron Legion, they'd have killed everybody civilian on that island rather than get the Avengers.
Yeah.
And it was just again one of them where it's like this is too much. And then when it blows up at the end, and none of them are hurt. I mean that's the only lead in my eyes they have for a civil war, but it doesn't seem like that at the actual credits.
I like your suggestion of maybe having, and you could have linked this in with the Hulkbuster fight as well. Maybe have Tony Stark, in his mind, saving people, but he doesn't really have any care for the casualties. Like he shouldn't have any kind of Terminator 2 T-800 vision of casualties he's taken. He'll just get the job done and won't care for human life. Whereas you could have had Captain America trying desperately to save all the civilians whilst also getting beat down, because he's focused on that.
Exactly.
And I think that would have been, you would have had your divide there where Tony Stark would have been on the side, I'm still getting the job done, that's all that matters. And then you've got Captain America saying, well, it's only good if we can save everyone in the process.
Exactly. Like there was that great quote where it's like, I don't want an escape route. I want to get every person off. If you'd have had people dying, then there's your civil war start. But again, everyone got saved. No one got hurt. Humpty Dumpty. They fly off. Shield return. Cut to credits. All happy family. Which I think was the wrong path to take for the dark and gritty one. Again, look at the Dark Knight. Look at Empire Strikes Back. They have bad endings that put the protagonists in an uncomfortable situation that people haven't seen before.
So what's going to be the angle with Civil War now? I know we're kind of just straying away from Age of Ultron now, but and going into more speculation. But in the comics, if I'm right, it's based on secret identity of the superheroes, which they clearly won't do with this because none of them have secret identities.
I think they do to a degree in this. What I think it's going to be is they're going to add it in for the sake of it, I believe. You know, when that city got destroyed, they'll say that's too much. So what they do, they bring in the Registration Act where Tony Stark says he gets like assaulted at a funeral of some of the victims that died. Tony Stark brings in this rule that says every single superhero has to have registered documents so the government know who they are, the public know who they are. You are like looking after certain districts, stuff like that. And then what you have the good boy Captain America who opposes this, saying, you know, not everyone's like secret. And then I believe this will transition into the film next year because Scarlet Witch won't want people to know about her identity. I mean, I could pick them apart who's been cast. Scarlet Witch, she won't want people to know she was originally against the Avengers, that she was part of the Ultron killings and stuff. So she'd want her identity kept. Captain America's doing it for the Freedom Fire. You've got Falcon, who was a war veteran, stuff like that. He won't want his identity out. But then you're going to flip it onto the other side. You've got Tony Stark, who the world knows who he is. You've got War Machine, the world knows who he is. And I think they're going to go with that angle, but I don't think it's going to be as great as it was in the comics, because it's too hard to do on a 2-hour screen. But whether it's something that lies through Phase 3, because at the end of the day, although it's Civil War, it's technically Captain America 3 as well. So I have a feeling what happens, this is a spoiler for the comics and potentially the film, but oh well. At the end of Civil War, Captain America hands himself in, and as he's walking to the trial, he is killed by Crossbones, who is confirmed to be in Captain America 3.
He was in a Winter Soldier, wasn't he? He was that guy at the end.
Yeah, because you finally get him. He'll be wearing the mask now, because obviously he's got the burnt face. And I think Civil War will end with Captain America being killed as a cliffhanger, not necessarily Bucky. Because some people... I'll change it again. I've heard rumours that Tony Stark will find out that Bucky actually killed his parents, which is going to create a massive... Because if Bucky's identity becomes public knowledge, that's another reason why everything might kickstart.
Yeah.
But I'm intrigued, because I like the Russo brothers. They did a good job with Winter Soldier. They've obviously got the 2 Infinity War films now.
Oh, definitely. I think that was one of probably the best decisions Marvel's made now, because it did kind of seem to me in parts that Joss Whedon's heart wasn't in this one as much as the first one. And I mean, he's gone on record and said he was just completely burnt out after the end of this film.
Yeah, he said he wants to do something original, have a bit of time off, and he's fair enough. He says, like, I can't dedicate 8 years of my life to a franchise.
Yeah, and Joss Whedon himself is kind of a more, not indie director, but a lot of smaller projects. So that's why it surprised me when they gave him the directing role of Avengers.
Yeah, he never worked with a big budget before. He
does a lot of TV, doesn't he?
And
that's the kind of medium he's most used to and comfortable with.
I mean, if you look at his track record, like, Buffy was a big hit. Firefly, cult following. Wrote Toy Story, everyone's seen Toy Story. But then for Marvel to go to him was great, because you could tell it was a Joss Whedon. He is one of the best writers, I think, at writing characters. I mean, you see it mainly in the first one, because you saw... The Avenger films had him in, like, witty and jokey then. So only when that first one came out, you saw Tony Stark at his best, which was the arrogance. But you saw things that only, like, Joss Whedon would be writing. You get a few of them jokes this time round. But then
I don't think they're as strong this time. I found the humour very inconsistent with this film. Like, you'd have scenes... I feel like I'm harping on this film too much. I don't mean to, like, completely badmouth it, but these are just the things that I'm coming up with. But one of the things I loved was the scene where, at the party, where they're all trying to lift the hammer.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have those kind of moments of levity, and I'm sitting back watching this superhero film going, these are the moments that DC are missing. You need moments where they're real people. They're just having a laugh. They're just,
exactly
regular guys.
And then didn't DC say some crap like, oh yes, we don't want any comedy in our films at all?
Yeah, no jokes policy. And I'm like, what the hell?
You have... Flash is going to be, like, joking with Superman. Well, okay, actually, no, take that back. Superman's going to be depressing now on, so actually he won't be joking at all. But
well, the Flash has got to be funny, because they've just cast the directors of Lego Movie, haven't they?
They haven't cast them as director. What they're doing, they're writing the treatment at the minute, so it's essentially... But then again, it's going to be their project to a degree. They might not direct it, but they're going to have a gigantic input onto it.
Yeah.
I think DC's going down a rough path. If it pays off, fair play. If they make good films, that's good for everyone.
Everything's going to be riding on Batman v Superman for that entire franchise.
Exactly. For Henry Cavill to come out and say this isn't a sequel to Man of Steel is ludicrous, because the trailer goes on about the destruction from the first. So DC need to watch out, because it could all explode in their face. Especially with the Joker's new tattoos, which haven't gone down too well.
Oh god, that looks so bad. I'll wait and see a trailer to see what his actual performance is like, because I know that when Heath Ledger's appearance came out, everyone was against it.
Yeah, because the Heath Ledger one was, oh my god, it's makeup, it's not It's not Liquid. Oh my god, it's Heath Ledger, the guy from Brokeback Mountain. It's not Jack Nicholson. And I think Leto, obviously, he's won an Oscar. He's got this ridiculously insane laugh. I think we'll see. I think we're gonna see the Joker turned up 100% now. He's not gonna be making jokes, but he's probably gonna kill someone and just be crying with laughter. And it's gonna be cool, but them tattoos are too risky. I mean,
it's too much. It's too much. They've literally spelt out that he's a psycho.
Exactly.
With the tattoo on his forehead. I mean, it's like let the actor, let the script dictate that to us. We're not stupid. We can understand that this character is a psychopath. You don't need to have damaged tattooed onto his head.
Exactly.
It's just dumb.
And that's what was annoying, because if you take away them tattoos, they've recreated one of the most iconic pictures, which would have been awesome. I mean, I'm a big comic book fan, but there are people that are worse than me, and they go absolutely mental when you have any recognition of a comic book. I mean, Zack Snyder, people dislike him, but Watchmen is essentially frame for frame the comic book, and that's great.
Yeah, I love that film.
And then that's one of the main things I'm excited for Batman v Superman, because it's going to be a really good adaptation of Dark Knight Returns, which is the best Batman graphic novel.
Did you see the conference when they confirmed it and they read that extract from it? The crowd went in just nuts.
Yeah, Comic-Con. I mean, I've seen that leaked trailer from Comic-Con. That's a better trailer than the first one. But that's because they even have the little things like in the Batman v Superman fight. There's a lamppost with the only light in the comic. That was even there. It was raining, just like the comic. I think Zack Snyder's going to make his fight scene's going to be fantastic. He's going to stick to the comic. It's just leading up to that is what I'm worried about.
The visual look of this one is definitely a lot better than Man of Steel. Oh, definitely.
It looks like we're in a comic book world.
Yeah, and if they stick to that, that'll be great. I'm just going back to the Joker. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
It's a tough one. I mean, because I thought there's so much potential, and I was getting really excited for it, and then it's just been a dampener of them tattoos. Whether that's, for all we know, he might be wearing makeup. He could end up getting the white liquid skin, but I very much doubt that'll be happening.
Well, I saw a side-by-side picture of Nicholson Joker, Ledger Joker, and now Leto Joker, and the captions above them were the gangster, the anarchist, and the psychopath.
Yeah, that's exactly what I saw as well.
And that definitely made me slightly more okay with the design.
Yeah.
If that's the take they're going for. But right now, from how the picture's framed and the lighting, it doesn't look like it fits this new incarnation of Batman and DC that they've gone for with Batman v Superman. When we see it actually on screen and we've got him in full costume and the lighting and it's all framed better, then I might, have a different take on it.
Exactly. It's too early to completely judge, but it wasn't clever what they did. That's what I can say. It might work, but it's a risky one. If it pays off, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, then again, it's not going great for DC at the minute.
But it is for Marvel. I mean, Age of Ultron's just clean up. I've only got a couple more points I'd want to bring up, and then we can just go into our conclusion of it. This was a plot hole I found, but I don't know if you can maybe explain it to me, because I mean you've seen it 3 times, so you might have picked up on it. It's the scene where Ultron escapes and Tony's kind of chasing him through the sky and shooting at him. And he gets Ultron cornered, and Ultron's basically like, even if you kill me here, I'm just going to transfer into another robot. And you might want to stop Scarlet Witch from taking over the Hulk. And Tony Stark destroys Ultron's body and flies off to deal with that. Then in like a few scenes later, Ultron's just back in full regular Ultron armor.
Yep. What I think he does, when he first kind of brings the twins into his workshop, I think he's made 3 or 4 versions of himself.
Oh, okay.
Because he fully evolves at the end with the with the vibranium, because he like destroys his old body for evolution.
Yeah.
But what I think he does is he mentions that he's like, oh yeah, you've got your money now to claw. I think he's through the internet, because it's essentially what Jarvis did. You know, Jarvis was basically hotwired around the Avengers and Shield, all of that. I think Ultron consumes it, and he was just artificial intelligence was just so powerful that he was able to go through the internet, which is why they were talking about the nuclear codes. But it's an interesting one, because I kind of thought they don't actually properly go into how we can do it. But he kind of...
No, it was very much in the background, wasn't it? I mean, I know he can create the kind of drones as his henchmen, but I just meant for his like physical body of Ultron.
I just think he would have had 2 or 3 versions, and then he just finished off with the vibranium. But then he kind of mentions at the start, you know, when you get his origin, which is actually really cool, when he's like, oh, Tony Stark, and then the screen starts cutting through Tony Stark's history. So that was almost like an internet presence to it. So I think that's how they've got around that little loophole.
And then really I just wanted to, because I've harped on this film enough, but I'd like to kind of end it on a positive note and talk about a couple of scenes I really enjoyed. That opening scene, man, just
it was amazing.
Wow.
That
one shot, and I was watching it, I was smiling. Everyone got their hero moment in the first scene. I was like, this is what a comic book movie should be. This is what,
exactly.
I know we've talked about DC, I don't want to go into that again, but I was thinking, this is what Man of Steel should have been. The fist pumping moments where you go like, fuck yeah, Captain America just tearing shit up, and
it's
Iron Man's doing his thing. It's great.
It's when he jumped off the bike and he smashes it on top of the tank.
Oh, I mean, it was so good.
I mean, it's stuff like that. It worked so well, and that was the balance of the fight team. No one stood out in that opening scene.
Yeah, and they're all kind of having their typical banter with each other, and
exactly.
I don't know if the kind of gag went on a bit long, but there's this running joke with Captain America, and he's calling people out on swearing.
Oh yeah, that was great. I mean, isn't that the first word of the whole film? Shit.
Yeah, shit from Iron Man, and he's like, language.
Exactly.
It's just little moments like that. Like, you've got your action, but you're balancing out with humour. And I know the humour is inconsistent, but in that first scene, it was perfect. Just everything blended together, and it just works so well. And then you've got, is it Baron von Strucker?
Yeah.
When he kind of gives a rousing speech to his men, like, never surrender, and then he just turns to his sideman and he goes, okay, I'm going to surrender.
Exactly. I think the opening 20 minutes had everything. I mean, that could be a finale of any film ever made, and people would love it. And the fact that they start off with something so strong sets the standards for me. And then again, it's like I said, that was like a comic book coming to life on screen. And it was just like, oh, someone take care of that bunker. Hulk comes in, blows it up straight away.
Yeah, it's so good. Just everything worked.
It was great fun, and I don't think we'll be getting that again, unless we do the start of part 1 of the... I don't know what Phase 3 is going to be like, but the Infinity Gauntlet seems like it's going to be dark and depressing when it hits it. So
I think Civil War, everything's riding on Civil War, in that's going to be the bridge between the next two kind of phases.
Exactly. I mean, Ant-Man's... A lot of people think Ant-Man's Phase 3, but they've said it in interviews, Ant-Man is the epilogue of Phase 2.
Yeah.
So, for all we know, Ant-Man actually could address Civil War. I mean, I've thought in some head, like, what about if the Ant-Man credit scene is like Robert Downey or Iron Man coming out and talking about the Superhero Registration Act, stuff like that. So I think it's still worth keeping an eye on Ant-Man. However, I'm not the most excited on that.
No, I don't think many people are, to be honest, with reviews and stuff of the trailers. But with Ant-Man, I was actually fine with the movie changing it to have Tony Stark create Ultron. I thought that made more sense for the movies, but I was thinking, if you did want Ant-Man to have some kind of gravitas in the series rather than just kind of tacking him on at the end of Phase 2, I don't know whether it would have been better to switch God into the Galaxy's placement with Ant-Man, because then you would have set up Ant-Man and then you could have him make Ultron at the end of that movie, which then goes into your Avengers 2, and then you end it with Guardians of the Galaxy for all your cosmic Thanos stuff.
Yeah, see, that could have worked, but my issue with Ant-Man is that although he does create Ultron, that's Hank Pym. I love Paul Rudd. I think he's hilarious. I love him in Friends and his other comedies. My issue is that he is Scott Lang, who is the second incarnation of Ant-Man, which they're doing, But it's just that it would be, imagine if the first Captain America film was
It'd been Bucky Barnes.
Yeah, had been Bucky Barnes, then Steve Rogers. It would have backfired.
It doesn't work, does it?
No.
Yeah.
And then this got the potential to work. So I've heard there's going to be flashbacks to a young Hank Pym, but they should have just stuck to the originals.
Yeah.
But
and I don't know why they changed it that much, and I know they're making some alterations to Wasp's character as well.
yeah, she's going to start off as almost the person that teaches him.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh yeah, how do you punch? Then she hits me in the face. She's another potential one. I think Ant-Man will probably be in Civil War.
Mm.
I can see that happening.
Well, you've definitely got to bring him into it somehow, just to kind of give credibility to his character.
Exactly. I mean, what happens? For the Infinity Gauntlet, they're talking about so many characters. They kind of need it. I mean, Thanos. I'm not big on the comic. I thought it was a great comic, but it wasn't as good as it had been hyped up to be. But it's the fact that everyone ever is essentially teaming up to try and kill, not kill Ultron, to kill Thanos. So it's going to be interesting how they're building up. But again, it's just speculation. But the Marvels create their own empire now. Yeah, I'm just gonna go neutral minded. There's been a few films before when I've hyped myself up too much, it's blown up in my face. So it's just to keep that under wraps. However, Avengers I was excited for, and I'm thankful that it paid off, because I had a great time.
One of the big problems I had with this, and I know you was talking about it with the lack of continuation into the next film, which will be Civil War, was the lack of continuity between Tony Stark's ending in Iron Man 3. Like, that movie ends where he kind of goes into retirement and hangs up the suit. So I was expecting the start of this movie to pick up where Tony Stark's in retirement and he's built this new suit of armor, which eventually becomes Ultron, to take his place with crime fighting. And then when he sees what Ultron becomes and like the pressure of the Avengers to like become Iron Man again, that's when he puts the suit on again. But like the first scene of this movie, he's just Iron Man, and there's no continuation from Iron Man 3, which is fine because I hated Iron Man 3, so if it gives me an excuse to kind of rule that out of the series continuity, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, with me, I mean, I enjoyed Iron Man 3, but I understand why people despise it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I would be probably really angry if I was a big Iron Man fan. My issue was that, yeah, he came back and he was Iron Man. I thought, again, they hyped up the Iron Legion, and I thought they were already there sorting stuff out. But the fact that it starts with him as Iron Man, it was a bit of a slap in the face. But for all we know, Joss Whedon might have had this opening scene planned for a while. I think it's something that's going to be touched upon in the credits. But then again, they not credits, I mean deleted scenes. But what they do slightly mention was that Baron Strucker was working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and that they all came together once they found out about the S.H.I.E.L.D. Hydra connection.
That's true. But I would have just liked... But even then, if you'd have carried it on from Iron Man 3, that would have been like the first half hour of your movie. Maybe even 40 minutes is Iron Man just kind of sitting around just doing nothing.
Exactly. I mean, 'cause what they built was Iron Man's funding the Avengers. I was like, oh, this could be really cool. You could have him at the top, them doing away stuff, him still building. And then if you'd have had Ultron just started doing stuff, he'd have been like, oh, I've got to come back. That's what I thought they'd do it, and I think that's what a lot of people thought they'd be doing it. But it was kind of just wasted away. But then again, you can criticise Marvel for that, because did anyone they'd already confirmed that Iron Man would be in Avengers 2 and 3 before Iron Man 3 came out. So in a way, that ending was rather needless in itself. So just a bit of error on both halves, I think.
And then sort of the last point I just wanted to touch on, really, which probably should have covered it in the spoiler-free section, but it's fine, was the love story between Bruce Banner and Black Widow, which for me came right the hell out of nowhere. Like, I know they had a few scenes together in the first one, but it was never really romantic.
Yeah, I mean, it was hinted at in the trailers, weren't it? They were, you know, doing the lullaby thing, which was kind of cool. I kind of just felt that they had to have a reason for the Hulk to leave, but I think they attempted to put some depth to Black Widow. But it was kind of weird because in the first Iron Man film, Iron Man 2, you kind of Tony Stark getting at her, nothing happens. Then you cut to the Avengers, you think, oh, her and Hawkeye. Then you cut to the Winter Soldier. Cut to Winter Soldier. There's her
and Cap.
and then obviously
Yeah.
there's her and Hulk. I don't know their history in detail, but I have heard of Black Widow and Hulk before. But it would have worked if it had been teed up before, but it was so in the face.
If it had been established before, or if they weren't already a thing at the very beginning of this film and it kind of developed at the end of the film, I think I would have been okay with it then. But as it was, I was just kind of watching it thinking, not every superhero property has to have a love story in it.
Exactly, and I think I talk about Daredevil. I won't spoil anything, but there's no love in the first 2-3 episodes of Daredevil. There's hinted at a love triangle, but the reality is there's not a love triangle. They go away from it straight away, which is great. That's another reason why people enjoyed it, because they don't stick to the formula, and it wasn't needed at all. But what another thing I want to say is this ridiculous stuff with Jeremy Renner and Chris Evans. Someone basically asked that same question.
Oh yeah.
And then let's be honest, we were all thinking it. And he's like, yeah, Black Widow's a slut, and I thought it was hilarious. Jeremy Renner did.
Yeah, same.
The interviewer did. Chris Evans did, and then Chris Evans was like, oh, I was about to say that. And the fact that there are people that have been upset by this, they're talking about a fictional character in a fictional universe, and they're getting upset.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were talking about this the other day, and if they'd have called Scarlett Johansson out as a slut, then that's a completely different thing. But the fact that they call the fictional character of Black Widow that...
Exactly. I mean, you pick up a page of a comic book, she's basically got her boobs out the whole time, like
Yeah.
every person has in these comics, and
Yeah.
it was so over the top, and they've had to do a public apology. It's just stupid.
I actually think the film actually gave a lot of credibility to Black Widow. I think she wasn't there. I mean, she is kind of there for eye candy sometimes. I mean, she did look great, but she's an actual character. She's not completely over-sexualized like she was in Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
They've come a lot further with the character, and there's actually a really, really emotional scene with her and Bruce Banner when they're at Hawkeye's safe house.
Yes. So it's when she's like, oh yeah, the graduation. They I forgot, but basically she can't have kids.
Yeah, they sterilise them because they don't want them to have any emotional connection to anything other than the mission that they're on.
Exactly, and that was so well done.
Yeah.
Because what's hinted at in the Agent Carter miniseries,
I still haven't watched that.
Agent Carter's great. It's just been a bit screwed over, but you actually get the origin of the Widow, because they're obviously all assassins.
Yeah.
And then the way that it's done in Agent Carter is you get a bit of this backstory, and that was expanded upon in Age of Ultron, which was really cool. I thought it was nice we got the backstory, but then you see the human side to her rather than just the assassin that's been in every film.
Because I was a little confused in this film where it kind of... I think is it when Scarlet Witch does the powers on her and we see like the ballet class? I was thinking, is this kind of super secret service of these agents masked by a front of like a ballet class, or was it ballet to like teach them grace and flexibility and stability, all that kind of stuff?
It's a bit of both. It's flexibility. No, yeah. So, the ballet's obviously hard to do. It's about the ankles, and I think she says it'll break them. So the fact that he was getting them to redo it, it might break ankles of some of them. So it's essentially separating the weak from the normal. I mean that's what I guessed from it. It might be something else completely, but it's a nasty origin. The fact that they've got her shooting the tiger, then she's shooting a person, then she's got to get sterilised. It was a great backstory again,
and
it's nice.
That was a very, very nice connection, I thought, to Incredible Hulk as well, because I don't know if it's still in continuity. The Edward Norton Hulk film. I mean, I know we had the recast, but I mean, there's no. One of the problems I had with it, if it is in continuity, there's no mention to Betty. Like when he's having this relationship with Scarlett Johansson, there's no talk of, oh, I loved another woman, but I can't be with her, or anything like that.
Yeah, I think because Universal, obviously Universal still got some rights. I think they're including it as part of the MCU, but they're maybe not bothered by it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit like what X-Men did. They kind of just forgot stuff.
Like besides the final scene of the Incredible Hulk movie with Tony Stark walking in, saying to I forgot his name. He's the Colonel guy in it. That is
General Ross.
That's it. That he's putting a team together. Besides that, there's like Coulson wasn't in that movie. There's been no reference to it. I think the only sort of mini reference to it was you saw the university fight on a monitor in Avengers.
Yeah. There's in Daredevil. There's a little reference to it.
Oh, is there?
There's this journalist. They don't milk it for Easter eggs, but it's a nice one. You're in the background of some guys. He's a famous journalist. You see a framed newspaper, the Battle of New York, but then on the left is Hulk the Abomination.
Oh, okay. So it's okay.
But it's in continuity. I don't think they're. I think if they did a Hulk film, they'd probably put them in. Whether it's another contract one where the person that plays Betty doesn't want to come back.
Yeah, Liv Tyler.
Because that's what you're getting with. Gwyneth Paltrow's out of contract. She hasn't signed.
Oh, I love how they wrote her out of. They give some kind of excuse that she's off doing something for the Stark Company. I was like, yeah, way to just say that you can't get Gwyneth Paltrow back for this movie.
And the same with Jane, because I've heard that Natalie Portman didn't like the first film. But you know how Marvel do contracts, they pay you, you do 3 films. I think they're using hers. I don't even think she'll be in the third Thor
I
film.
I think they might kill her off in Ragnarok towards the start, perhaps.
But she might not even need to be in it, because if it's all set on Asgard, he's got no reason to come back to Earth. But I've heard she caused a lot of issues on set, and she also did that in Star Wars too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why if you look at the prequels, she's in episode 3 far less, because apparently she's just a little shit.
That surprised me. That's really surprised me.
Exactly,
with her. I thought she'd be really cool.
I think she's a fantastic actress, but if these things are true, then maybe she's just a bit up herself. But it's just it's just speculation. It might not be
or
true.
Or maybe she's demanding more money or something.
No, she just didn't like it. I think, to be fair to Marvel, they've had a history where a lot of people have come out and says, we don't like your films. But then again, none of them have been, okay, except Ed Norton. There's been no main leads. You've had Red Skull, who doesn't necessarily have to come back. He's under contract, but out of respect, I don't think Marvel would do it.
Well, with Hugo Weaving, it's slightly different. I mean, he was under so much makeup. Now, Hugo Weaving's one of my favourite actors, but it's more realistic to get a different actor for him.
Yeah.
And continue the character that way.
Exactly, because Red Skull, he could just wear a mask. He could be. A lot of people thought that Robert Redford's character would be Red Skull in Winter Soldier, and that's what I originally thought too. But then that was cool, that twist, that he was actually just a Hydra agent.
But you've put me at ease now that Incredible Hulk is still sort of in continuity, because another thing that made me think it wasn't in this movie was after the Hulkbuster fight, Bruce Banner says something like they've finally seen what the Hulk really is and what the Hulk can do. I was like, oh, so we just kind of ruling out that incident where you fought Abomination in the middle of a city.
Yeah, I think the difference. Actually, yeah, I suppose it would be.
Unless
like
that was, I don't think you could cover that up because it was like a really big, epic fight in a city.
Yeah, that's the thing, because the fact that it's teased in Daredevil shows it's still there. I think what Marvel are doing there, they're saying the Hulk exists, but they aren't completely bothered by it.
I mean, they set up the leader at the end of that movie, didn't they? So whether that'll ever get a payoff,
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't think that will do. I think the Hulk's too big now. He'd have to be a.
I think the Hulk would work better as a TV show, like it used to. Maybe I know the budget would be pretty high if you've got to keep, for the effects on the Hulk, but
it depends how they do it. I mean, by TV, like I don't. It would suit a Netflix one more because you get a bigger budget on that, because Netflix is going to be so dark and violent.
Daredevil's
and stuff like
fantastic. That's like
I love
it. I would go so far as to say that's a masterpiece of a series. That sets the benchmark now, not just for superhero properties, but just TV in general for me.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think the budget's as high as you think. There's a lot of stuff on post that they could have graded in. The cinematography's unreal. The acting, you can get all that on normal TV shows. But I was thoroughly impressed with that.
Well, I think I've kind of said everything I need to on Age of Ultron, so we'll just kind of tie it up again with overall thoughts. We've kind of gone into speculation with Marvel moving forward, so we won't really need to go into that. Again, not as good as I hoped it would be, but it was still solid entertainment for almost 3 hours. I never checked my watch once all the way through, so that says something for the film, even if the second act does kind of drag a little bit. The final fight is a little bit overlong, and it does kind of fall victim to the same problem as the first film, where, and like Phantom Menace syndrome, where the big kind of mothership is destroyed and all the lackeys are kind of useless. And you've got kind of faceless drones where they don't really have inflict any harm on our heroes, so they're all kind of just cut down like it's nothing. But besides that, the acting's solid. There is some pretty good action, especially the one at the start, and it's fun. Although it's darker than the first one, it's still a lot of fun. And I mean, you've probably already seen it now. If you're a Marvel fan, if you're a comic book fan, if you're a fan of blockbusters in general, go and see it. See it on a big screen. Don't wait for it on Blu-ray. See it now for the sound and the impact of just seeing it on a big screen. And I think you'll probably see it on IMAX if you get the chance.
Yep, I'm going to say this film is fantastic. It's better than the original. It's taking the MCU to further lengths, action, new game players, stuff like that. See it in an IMAX. Make the trip to one. Watch e-cinema. Don't, for the love of God, don't wait for a DVD. It doesn't do it justice on a 40-inch TV. See it as soon as you can, and then people don't like it. A lot of people do. It's hard to summarise it because it's got more negative reaction than I thought of it. To me, this was a comic book being shown on screen. A fun one too. And I think it's worth watching. It's the start of blockbuster season.
Yep.
Get it off of a bang.
Hopefully some good films to come maybe this summer. I mean, we've got Mad Max followed next, so...
Oh, they showed a trailer against it. It's just awesome.
That and Star Wars, they're my two most highly anticipated films of the year. So I hope it lives up to it.
Yeah, definitely Star Wars is the one, but that's still 8 months off.
We can tear them apart. From the inside. That's the best you can do! You had to ask.
But yeah, so that was our review of Avengers Age of Ultron. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Twitter, all our links are in the description. Stick around because we'll be having a lot more reviews coming out throughout the summer movie season and moving forward. We usually end our shows with a movie recommendation, which is vaguely sort of tied into our movie, so it's just something fun. And then at the end of the week we'll kind of come back and do a little mini episode on that with us reviewing that given film. So we usually make it link into the film review today, so George, what's the film you've nominated?
Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow, okay.
It is, without a doubt, one of the funnest films of last year. The best original film in years. And it's based off a Japanese manga, so it's got your comic book links. It's structured very similar to one. And it's just fun. And it's fantastic. It's at the right length. It was just a pleasure to watch that.
Okay, well, I've got a lot to say on that. I'm sure you have too. So
yeah,
join us again at the end of the week where we'll review Edge of Tomorrow. And as I said, like us on Facebook, like us on Twitter, follow us because there'll be some good things coming from the channel. Thanks guys.
Goodbye, see you soon.